Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. As your host, Orlando Haynes, each and every week. You know the drill. I say it every single week. I bring you amazing guests with actionable advice to impact not only your career, but your life. But super excited for tonight. You've seen the flyer, the promotions. You see who I have on. This is going to be a good one. This is really going to be a good one. So before we dive into that conversation, we want to make sure that you're subscribing to the podcast, following both my guest and myself here on LinkedIn, but on Apple, Spotify. Subscribe to the Career Talk podcast so I can bring you more amazing guests. So without further ado, started a little late, folks, but I'm sure if you're tuning in or catch the replay, you're going to be impacted either way. Super excited because I reached out to Miss April Little just wasn't too long ago. I think we've been connected for a little while, but reached out to her. She immediately responded. And if you know who she is, she has a massive following on LinkedIn. So surprised that she even seen the message, in the LinkedIn DMs, because those can get flooded when your following increases. But again, excited to have this conversation about promotion strategies. And let me welcome none other than Miss April Little. How are you?
Orlando, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for saying yes. I'm sure
Absolutely.
as I mentioned, I'm sure you get flooded with so many requests to appear here and there based on the great work that you're currently doing. So always super appreciative when folks taking their time out to join me on the podcast.
Well, I first off appreciate you for having me. I do often get a lot of requests, but I've been trying to do a better job of fielding those requests with other fellow career coaches. So we're talking about aligning topics.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah. So share with folks, the folks that don't know who you are, share a little bit more about who you are and your background.
So I'm April Little, for those who don't know me, and I'm an executive career coach. I primarily work with mid-level professionals, people leaders who want to break through to executive roles. And I help them with two things. It's to help them leverage and strategize with what they already have, so that way you're not going out getting another degree, and mastering your communication and talking about what you do. So I help you with two vehicles essentially to break through. Most of my clients, they break through. I'm working with them usually at the manager to senior manager level. You know, they're getting to the director level and then they're getting to the VP level. So that's primarily what I do. Prior to that, I spent 15 years of my career in recruiting, talent acquisition, and HR. And now I've been an executive career coach, oh my God, for 2 years. So feels like it's been longer, but yeah.
Awesome. So something you said that it was funny because I was about to make a post on this very topic, but you said it. You help folks who already have something and actually work with the talents they already have and get them to the next level.
Yep.
And I was going to make a post that said simply, roughly around what career coaches do. It sums up, we take what you bring to the table, but give you a different perspective, direction, and target towards your next goal. Does that align with how you think when you work with your clients that are aspirational and want to get to the next level? You're saying, okay, let me see what you have. Mm-hmm. Let me see what I can work with, and let me show you how I can get you to the next level.
That is correct. And actually, if I can walk you through my process, what I've been doing with some of my longer term clients, we do a 360. And I want to find out more about their leadership style and their communication style. I want to know what the perceptions are, because many of my clients, when they come to me, they want to know, is it possible to have my dream at my current job, or do I need to move on? That's important, because then we have to figure out whether we're going to work on their promotion strategy there, or if the promotion strategy is just going to be the training ground for the next job. So from there, we sort of assess the level of their relationships with other leaders and other peers. They're building relationships up, down, and across, because everybody in the organization is just as important. We're not title heavy, even though I primarily work with people who want titles. From there, I'm looking at, is there a way to sort of align their team so that way they can get their head out of the weeds and start doing more. We also look for, I'm working with a client right now. We just got a major win, and she wants to break through to a executive role. She's a director of human resources. Just to give you an idea of what we do together, She wanted to create policies for responsible AI usage. The company doesn't have it, and they'd be crazy to think that no one's using AI just because they don't have a policy. So they're still, they're still using it. So we put together a campaign to go to her CEO, and she just actually secured that one to get a consultant to come in to create responsible AI policies. And we did that so that way we can get a few high visibility projects under her belt.
Mm. Okay, so we're talking two different things here, and let me know if I'm
Yeah.
off topic.
Yeah.
You're helping them in such a way that if they are already at the level that they just got promoted or whatever, you're
Mhm.
helping them almost push through, not almost, but push through projects or initiatives they want that will give them an additional feather in their cap. Also,
They do. And I've been
okay.
reluctant to kind of fully own the title, but I guess you can call me a coach sultant.
Ah, so it almost
Yeah.
in lieu of the air we're in when it comes to the big election, etc. It's almost, it feels like you have that that policy capability to push it over the fence, to get it right, to get it approved amongst the
Yeah.
different sides, the different audiences and whom they speak to. Let me peel back that, because that's interesting, because most coaches don't do that. I don't target any of that as well. I'll have
Mhm.
consultations, but I don't make that a practice to really fully dive in with that person to say, okay, let me see what your initiative, and this is the best way to position it to get the CFO, CEO, VPs, HR buy-in.
Yeah.
What is your framework for walking them through that? Because each audience needs a different type of verbiage.
That's true. So the first thing is when we're going through the framework, we're trying to tie it into what is really close to the CEO's heart. So I can tell you for me without exposing my client. So now I'll go to me. I knew that what was close to my CHRO's heart was that she was constantly being called to the floor about retention,
Mm,
constant. So when I worked in talent, I used that as an opportunity because some of the people were leaving before, you know, 12 months. And so unfortunately at certain organizations, if talent is leaving before 12 months, I know I have mixed views on that we should be held accountable for that because we're sending them out to a leader to be to be managed,
I'll
right?
tell you right out,
But
no.
we're yeah. No, we should
No,
not be measured by that. So,
no.
um if they leave under like a year and under, they still looked at TA.
Hmm, hmm.
So what I did was we put together kind of a strategy to look at where people maybe not clear on what the responsibilities are. And I have to be honest, for anybody here, I know we talk about work life balance, but sometimes there is a disconnect between what we want on LinkedIn and what really happens. And it was really setting the tone that you probably weren't going to work 40 hours.
Mm,
And we had to start painting more realistic pictures in the phone screens for people about what a work week could look like, especially for our cleared folks that worked in skiffs and things of that nature,
mm,
especially for, people who worked where we would win a huge major government contract. I mean, we'd probably need everybody, including God and country, on board to get everything done. So it was really making sure that they knew it wasn't 40 hours.
got it. Was the clock out
And
at
that
five
was
o'clock?
helpful. Yeah, and so that was helpful. There were other things that we did, but that was one of the major things that we did was to give them more of a realistic day in the life so they understood what they were getting involved in.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And
So
that
when
is
it comes,
somewhat of what I do with my clients.
okay, that's part. Okay, that's part of it.
Yeah.
And for those, the majority, and again, always correct me if I'm wrong, the majority is those who just want to get to the next level, maybe not thinking initiative just yet until they obtain the role. And so when we talk about the different strategies you walk them through, walk us through some of those components there.
In terms of getting promoted.
Yes.
Yeah. So if I get away from, I still have a consulting hat on. So
Hmm.
I am working with them on relationships because ultimately it's going to be how they're perceived that's going to get them promoted and their presence. So I always say that I'm not a real big believer in executive presence the way it's taught with all the traits. The truth is it is your internal uniform. Do I know that Orlando is going to be consistent and concise when he gives this to me? How is he going to react when he's under fire? Does he operate with grace under fire? So it's starting to be consistent in how you show up. People know what to expect of you. Are you even keeled when you have to give bad news? Those types of things. Are you a good communicator? Do you know how to influence? Do you know how to do those things? Do you inspire confidence even though you didn't meet your numbers?
Mm.
So that's where we start, right? And that's how I like to teach presence with my clients, not saying, oh, you need to be charismatic. Because if you're not charismatic, I'm not going to make you charismatic. We start getting into the land of code switching at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're going to work with is, okay, do you already have some really nice traits? Let's amplify those a little bit. That's what we focus on, is working with what you got. So really what we do is we look at the career ladder. That's the first thing. You're here, you're a level 5. What does it take to get you a level 6? Okay, I'm not trying to get you more work. So how can we start influencing? Because influencing is how you don't do the work. You do the work with your mind. And this is how we get away from being rewarded with more work. Sometimes you do have to take on more work to get
Mm-hmm.
promoted, and those are cross-functional projects, which we'll get to now. And then we look at what are the major initiatives at work? Are there cross-functional projects that you can join? Some companies have yellow belt projects, green belt projects, and we work on maybe getting aligned to that. Then getting the word out. Let your manager know that you want to move up. Don't ask for their permission, ask for their support in building some relationships with other people. This is where the consulting comes in. I do work directly with my clients to help them pick their mentors and sponsors.
Mm.
So we're looking for people who influence, and I have them to do that over a few sessions by going to a meeting. If they were going in one direction, one person comes in the room and they change the direction. That is an influencer, and we need them on your team.
Okay.
So we do some stuff with that. Also, we don't discount anyone just because they don't have a title. The person at the front desk that's been there 30 years, that probably takes 30 cigarette breaks that people are ignoring, is the person that is essentially the living citadel there that you need to get to know, because they've changed hands in power. Now, you do have to be careful how you operate with folks, right? Depending on their levels, discretion, things of that nature. But you should be looking to build relationships up, down, and across. Then we look at who is the mentor for you. I believe that mentors really shouldn't be in your organization. We focus on the sponsors. And the reason why is
Mm.
because the executive framing is really important. So we want to keep you framed. And sometimes there is going to be people that piss you off. And maybe your sponsor is not the right person to talk about that. And your sponsor, when you leave jobs, should become your mentor. So it should be somebody that maybe that was your sponsor at your last job that now becomes your mentor. And that's the person that you talk to about workplace dynamics and how to deal with a boss you don't like, because that's a more protected person outside of the organization. That's not to say that some people don't have the luxury of having that within their sponsor. But now I want to get to how you should be using your sponsor. So your sponsor, people often go into building relationships with people and they make it like one-sided transactional. It's not supposed to be that way. The way you're supposed to do it, or the way I work with my clients, there's many paths to getting promoted. So there could be other coaches here and they're like, we do this. This is what works for us usually. So what you should be doing with the sponsor is when you get ready to identify them, we do that by their gaps. So this is how we get away from you needing
Mm.
another degree and another certificate and all that, right? So if you want to learn how to communicate better, maybe you want to do data and you notice over time you've observed that in someone. The way to do that is to give them a compliment. That's how you build relationships with people. Hey, Orlando, I noticed that you do this really well. Just so happens I'm looking to do this better. Do you have a vacancy on your roster for, another sponsor E? Usually people are flattered by that. And then what starts to happen is that you're starting to learn from them in a more collapsed environment, the same as in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
You're collapsing time, you're working with somebody in a one-to-one transfer. From there, the meeting should go from this, where you're the student and them, to this, because they'll start valuing your opinion too. And once you become that closed door advisor, that's where they start mentioning your names in rooms you're not in.
Mm.
That's
Okay.
right. So this is what we do here. And we work this as a wash, rinse, and repeat. This is not something that just happens overnight, but this is the systems that we actually get in place to first start to understand what people need to do. From there, it's putting together the ask, making sure that that's a single subject meeting. So there's a lot of tactics, but I would have to say that the biggest two pieces that we do, well, three, is making
Mhm.
sure that we pick your sponsors, mentors, and all that together. I do the 360s. I want to know what the perceptions are because that gives me an indicator. Can you do that there? Or do you need another job? Then we will work on any cross-functional projects that are going to give you more visibility and just working that system even with your team, starting to promote them. And that's another thing that we do as well. This is sort of custom. So I usually do about 7 steps, but with most people, some people need less, some people need more. Because if you're already leading a large team, then we need to put in sort of an everyday succession plan because you should be, in the words of my favorite mentor in my head, Carl Harris, you should be replacing yourself.
Right.
And so it's not just about you. This is how you don't create more followers, you create more leaders. You're giving your team meaningful work while also freeing yourself up to take on the next level. You're freeing them up to take your seat too.
All right. A lot to unpack. So
Yeah. Yeah.
tons of questions. I have tons of questions. So I would say my first follow-up question for you, April, is you mentioned the mentor sponsorship. I hear a lot of coaches say that, right? You should get it, but not many, or if any, help you do that. And I think that's where a lot of professionals get stuck. How do I do that? How do I go
Yeah.
about initiating that conversation? And so that's one massively crucial piece I think that sets you apart. The other piece is the mentor. You say is the mentor external, and then the sponsor is internal. Or did I get okay?
So the way we work on it, especially so, and again, this is why it's more custom with me when it's one-to-one.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's some toxicity in
Hmm.
certain or environments, but people don't want to leave. It's still a good overall environment because I don't believe that culture necessarily starts at the bottom. It can start in the middle. There could be good pockets of an organization that have decent culture, and there could be teams that don't have good culture because
Correct.
culture ultimately is sort of your experience on your team. Well,
Correct.
so typically when I work with people, it's to understand what does that look like? Because I realize that they're having a real human experience that we certainly work through in coaching to say how much of this is you and how much is this the other person, but also realizing that it's something that they're going to need to put together in a system that might go beyond our 3-month container of setting that system in place and making sure that they have that mentor to leverage externally to help them deal with that person.
So the if you were to frame it in 3 steps, if it's more, that's fine. If it's great, if it's
Yeah.
less, either way. To the how to tap into a external mentor, is that by industry, by level, similar, role that you aspire to be in? What does that
Yeah.
look like for those that partner with you?
I do think that the people that you keep around you should be a possibility model. So if the person is at the level that you want, I think it should be somebody at the level that you want. And even if it's not, maybe they're really good with strategy, they're good with the 48 laws of power, they're good with helping you play political chess. So
Hmm.
they still can serve a purpose, but I do think that your mentor should be someone that you aspire to. I don't think that they have to be in the same industry.
Yep, I
So it
had that
could be,
conversation.
yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go right ahead. Sorry.
I'm saying I just had that conversation. What's today? Monday. Yep, last week, about the mentorship piece, and my co-host said, look at someone external outside the organization. I just thought that was so powerful because it's almost like you mentioned the toxicity that could be in the organization, but there's a non-bias to it as well, right? It's
Yep.
okay. I'm going to give you the framework to get you here. I don't care what's going on in there, or I do if you tell me, but I'm still show you how to build a framework, a mindset to be able to push through it because I've done it.
Yeah.
And so here's the framework that I think consistently is work. Take what you need from it, but for the most part, this is the office politics that you'll need to weave through to get to the
Mhm.
next level and see. And this is the benefits of it. So yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that. So I love that. The other piece what about those who are first time leaders? Right. So they're not managers yet, but aspire to be a manager. Um, do you coach folks like that? What does that look like? Because that's a bit different where they don't have the leadership skills or
Yeah.
leading a large team. What does that coaching look like initially?
So they're probably 10% of my audience. For the most part, most people already come to me, people leaders, but I often
Hmm.
do have people who really aspire to move into leadership. And we do follow a similar path. I can give you an example. The path that I found was I worked with talent acquisition in our corporate. So we had segments, but then we had corporate that was in charge of maybe the interns that came in, and I started leading the interns. So it's putting together a sort of a strategy of how to give them leadership experience, but we look for everyday leadership opportunities too.
Mm.
People think that they don't have an opportunity to lead. It's not just the people. When they say that you don't need a title to lead, they talk about what we're really talking about is yourself, your self demonstration of leadership. So we can avoid exploitation, which might be a topic for another day. But for the most part, what we do is we'll work on how are you showing up in terms of how you communicate. People don't know this, little known fact, but if you have a cadence or a speaking turn in a cadence in a weekly meeting, that is leadership. And if you are able to consistently share your governing thought to move the needle, you show up as the leader. If you facilitate a meeting, you are the leader. So it is starting to look at some of the opportunities that you can capitalize that you do every day at work or every week to demonstrate that leadership, even if it's not leading people.
Love that. Love that.
Yep.
All right. So much to unpack. Like I mentioned, you also mentioned identifying by gaps. So is that the me going to you as my mentor saying, can you identify my gaps, or should I be bringing my gaps, self-identified gaps to you, or is that a combination
So
of the 2?
I do think it's a combination, and that's usually what sparks them coming to pay for coaching.
Mm.
But for the most part, what will happen is we will kind of compare them. Here you are, and here's where you want to be. If they 1x their like career vision, as they call it, or 2x it, and they're matching themselves up against the career ladder, and say they're level 5 and they want to be a level 6, we're going to look at, well, what are some of the experiential things that you need to be a level 6? From there, we look at, can you get this either from work? Can you get this from a person, or do you need a certification? Certification education is at the bottom of the list because company education is going to be far more valuable and actionable and implementable faster, if that's a word,
It is
than
tonight.
than the ivory tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned how you show up, right? Not the traditional way of executive coaching speaks to, but how much of your personal brand inside the office plays a part of that?
Plays a huge part. It's the reason why we see so many people get promoted that really aren't better than you.
Mm.
I know. And I know that that's kind of a hard pill to swallow because we all have stories about people who've been promoted that aren't half as qualified. The difference, though, is that they got other people to believe that they are. So that is a skill.
Influence. Yeah.
Hmm. And
Heavy
that's
on
what most top
persuasiveness. Yeah.
performers are missing, is that they're hoping their work's going to speak for itself, and it never will. You have to speak for it.
Yeah. So when it comes to your personal journey, I'm gonna pull it all the way back and ask, where was that epiphany for you to say, okay, I'm now going to step out of the walls of corporate to initiate this path to help folks achieve their next level? What was that turning point for you in your career?
I think I had two. Um, and I resonate with Tiffany Uman when she said this. I listened to live with her about, I enjoyed developing my team more than I enjoyed helping them meet KPIs for hiring.
Mm.
I enjoy helping them get promoted, helping them get raises, helping them get exposure. And then what started happening is I would have other people from other teams in HR and say, hey, April, I'm wanting to move into this role. Can you kind of explain the career framework to me? What is it that I would need? And I started enjoying that more in my job. I was still doing my job really well. I didn't have any issue, but those are the things that I was secretly enjoying. But the turning point for me before pay transparency, so if anyone's listening, watching, before pay transparency, someone actually just said you sound like you're a PR person for corporate people. Yes. Um, yes, I like that. The Olivia Pope, maybe. So, um, Sorry, that just took me off. It was funny.
No.
Okay. I shouldn't have clicked on comments. Go back to private chat. So I'll go back to private chat. So the second thing was before pay transparency. And I'm saying that again because I want to stress before pay transparency. You know, a lot of companies didn't allow you to share salaries with people.
Mm-hmm.
And before pay transparency, I started breaking the rules. And that's also when I knew that the job that I wanted didn't exist in corporate. It was my job to step out to help people climb. So there was a specific situation with someone who was applying for a job. She asked for 80. I knew that the midpoint of the range 50 pp was 100. So I said, "You want 100?" She's like, "Yeah, well, 8, you want 100." That's when I
Mm.
knew.
Like, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, that's when I knew. I was like, "I'm not cut out to do this. I'm going to get in trouble."
Right, right. I get it. I get it. Trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there was a way, right? If there was a way to really, especially when it comes to the pay transparency, right? Florida is still struggling to get on board.
Mhm.
Corporations, they're a little fearful
Well, some of
because
the pay transparency states aren't really posting it anymore either, and they
yeah,
should be. I've seen
yeah.
postings and I don't see the range listed.
And let's be honest, there's a mix of candidates who will always shoot for the higher, no matter what.
Mhm.
All right. But the ones that are talented enough and have the skill set should be getting, the higher mark. But then you also, you got to think about, internal equity, et cetera. So we get it from a
Yep.
budget standpoint and everything. But there is that concern that candidates will be like, well, you were just getting paid 50. Now you're asking for 80. Did your skill set improve 30,000 that you can add that much value to the organization in such a short period of time? That's just the way my mind thinks.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know what's that going to look like, but we're seeing the effects of that. Not to veer off topic, folks, but we're seeing the effects of that where that's no longer the case, where people can ask for these crazy numbers, and now companies can't maintain that kind of payroll, and we're seeing
Yep.
layoffs, et cetera, that are happening. So
I'm
as you
finding,
go ahead.
Orlando, I'm finding
No.
that the best leverage for salary negotiation, I recently had a client that just accepted a role at Disney.
Mhm.
I'm finding that you have more leverage. It's like we're going back to 2019. Let's skip over 2020 ever happening.
Mhm, mhm,
Back in 2019, I can remember it vividly, recruiting prior to COVID.
mhm.
It was candidates who were sourced had more leverage. They always do. And that's why it's important to strive to be sourced,
Yep.
because you do put yourself in a better position because they're seeking after you, being sought out.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That leverage is in your favor for sure.
Hmm.
So now, as we're talking about the personal brand piece to it, breaking into the next level, what are you seeing from a consistency? And I like to ask this of coaches: is that what is the missing, or should I say, the most surprising thing that you're seeing from your clients that is a common theme amongst them that you're like, okay, maybe I need to drill down or create another project or process for this because I see this always popping up. Is it self-worth? Being able to communicate their value? What does that
Yeah.
look like?
I'm actually glad you asked that. So I have been primarily working with my clients one-to-one for a very long time, for basically this entire 2 years. And then prior to that, just on the side with my job. And I have put together themes, which is now why I have a group coaching program coming out in January. And it's going to be called executive material, because so many of us have been told that we're not.
Mm,
And the focus of executive material really is a blend of leveraging your leadership skills and your communication skills to move the needle in your career. So you're probably a good executor, but what we're going to work on is communicating with precision, inspiring, making sure that you can present, making sure that you could communicate with your governing thought, spinning the negative into a positive. So doing a lot of communication, corporate communication. So primarily it's a corporate communication program. It's going to be 4 months. And I have found over the time that I've worked with people, they struggle with speaking up with meetings, with sharing their thoughts. When they do share their thoughts, maybe they are rambling and then they're getting ignored. They're not getting ignored. I actually just made a post. You're just drowning people with your thoughts, with word salad. Uh, they might even feel like they're still doing some of the same execution tactics that got them where they are, and they're trying to do that and continue going. It's just getting them more work. So those are a lot of the themes that I see with people. I will also say this, that some of the themes are is that they transition from having really juvenile problems with people at work to when you rise up. I had this conversation with a client. They're dealing with people who are telling them that their idea was stupid in a nice way.
Mm,
Right. So there is a transition even in how you deal with people at that level when you're dealing with conflict, politics, um, starting to figure out if you're supposed to run things by people, understanding if you need to do a bunch of audience analysis before you present an idea. Those are a lot of the things that tend to come up in the coaching. And those are just overall themes over and over and over again. So there's a process of getting them to move to that next level.
do you think that chips away at their confidence?
Yeah, I do.
Almost sounds like they're second guessing, triple checking everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Reading over
Mm,
the email 15, 38 times before they send it out. Um, not and because of that lack of confidence, they're offering too much context.
mm,
Whereas we focus on offering just enough to create some mystery, because that actually puts you in the position of being point on it. Because if you're prompted, you can offer more context to inspire confidence to nip it instead of just blurting it all out.
correct. Yep, that's true. Yep, I've seen both sides of the fence. Yep, and I've been guilty of
Yeah.
times where um, I've read it 20, 11 times and like, oh my God, did I input enough? Because I don't want 50 follow up questions. What about this? What about that? So
Yep.
gauging how much do I give to close the loop so it's said and done. And
Yeah.
so that's definitely uh, I think a path of test going back and forth to see based on the audience and who you're speaking to, right? It's also having that
Yep.
discernment, knowing as you go up, as your audience changes, the verbiage changes, it gets tighter and tighter to the points.
Yep.
And so being aware of that is, I think, is crucial too.
Yeah, I mean, it's always remembering that the person that you're speaking to, because you're going to be going up higher. And some of
Hmm.
my clients actually report to the CEO. You are reporting things to people who have a 30,000-foot view into what you're doing. They
Yep.
don't want to see the kitchen. They just want to know what's on the roof.
Yep. Yep. So you said something earlier that was pretty interesting. You said being able to inspire even when you don't hit your numbers.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's definitely a skill set in my opinion when I think it the way you phrased it.
It
Talk us
is.
through
And
that.
so when I work with my clients, that's where we get into the storytelling, which is also something that comes up a lot.
Hmm.
And that's how storytelling can serve you, is not just telling a story. I think that most people need stories. For my client who recently just won the AI governance policy thing that we're working on, we looked for some case studies of companies that didn't do it to influence that decision about why they needed it. About them not jumping on board has caused a bunch of issues with employees feeding ChatGPT with proprietary information instead of creating your own chatbot,
Wow.
right? Where you can protect things. So storytelling comes into play a little bit, and it doesn't have to be another story that you have. It could be setting the context. It could be something as simple as I'll give you something quick. Because I had to do it a lot because we didn't meet our numbers sometimes when we had the war on talent during COVID. So it could have been, our CHRO wanted us to hire 60 engineers. And we had Amazon that came in town at that time. And that was really bad for us.
Oh yeah.
It just wasn't, we didn't have sexy enough packages. And they weren't willing to move the needle on salary. They weren't willing to add on bonuses. We didn't do anything. We just thought that our employer brand was enough. And so I set the stage before sharing it. As you all know, we set an ambitious goal to hire 60 engineers. We were able to hire 59. And here's why.
Mm,
Or you could say we were able to hire 50, and here's why. We had Amazon come in. We had two unforeseen things. However, the team really came together and we were able to get 59. I think it's an opportunity for us to also reevaluate market conditions and create, some more realistic goals. So it is sharing a little bit. It's not sharing too much. I always say that there's a rule of thumb. You should be saying about 150 words per minute. So when you actually want to pace yourself. So when I work with my clients now, interview prep, they have to get their answers out in 90 seconds because I know that they're going to do it in 2 minutes in the interview. And so
Mhm.
we do something similar to that when you're speaking. You're only going to capture people's attention for about 60 to 90 seconds. So you need to get that out in 60 to 90 seconds.
So that Amazon story I know all too well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lived
Yeah.
that life for
Yeah.
sure. I actually worked for Amazon. Was on that side where we came into town new and was the disruptor organization for that community. And so running talent for them in Jacksonville, Florida. So yep, I know that too well. And then on the opposite side, when they were coming into town, seeing the effects and having to give that pull together the data to say
Mhm.
here's where we're going to lose and here's where we need to shift to have a chance. And that's a tough push, right? That's a tough push for
Yeah.
management to say no, 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 just you know almost resting on their laurels. We've been doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, let's are we comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges? And so what it came down to is like comp will lead, right? Comp will
Yep.
attract first in opportunities, and then the rest will follow. And so know that fight all too well, April.
Oh, yeah,
Way
and
too
that
well.
was when,
Way
I know
too
that we're
well.
at the place now where Amazon's making everybody come back to work,
Hmm.
but prior to that, Amazon was never an issue for us because we're in upstate New York, but that's when the world opened up and all 100% remote jobs started happening at the FANG
Yeah.
companies, and we were cooked at that
Mm.
point, and no one wanted to change our strategy, no one wanted to expand the budget, and it didn't matter, it all fell on deaf ears that we would need to do that because we didn't have stock because we
Hmm.
were a government contractor, and we couldn't compete with that.
Yep. We was even trying to figure out how many people we would lose in advance. We was trying to run
Yeah.
those numbers based on the postings. We're like, okay, this is what they're looking for. We know several people in the organization who has that talent, etc. So, yep, know that story all too well.
Yeah,
That's funny.
it's very set. I mean, it was an exciting time in talent
Hmm.
because it was literally the war on talent. I mean, it was like
Yeah,
musical chairs. People were leaving for
yeah,
$20,000. They were getting sign-on bonuses, and then we started getting sign-on bonuses. So yeah,
yep, yep. I know.
yeah.
We can
And
talk about that for
now the
hours.
world has seen the great reset.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So, from a strategic perspective, when it comes to helping those folks with initiatives, right, that they're wanting to get over the line,
Mhm.
or you're asking them to make sure they're bringing something to the table, or they're coming to you and saying, April, I have a concept, but I don't have it, you know, mapped out. Can you help me from almost from the beginning of that? Or let me know if this is the same question, just asking in a different way. Can you give me something now that I'm in this new role? Can you give me an idea of an initiative I should be able to push through that will help me? Are they coming to you like from ground zero all the way up to this is the framework, but I'm have some gaps in this, and what can you help me fill to get it over the mark?
That is exactly right. So for custom coaching, typically I try to focus on like a single subject issue. Usually we could focus
Hmm.
on 1 to 2 and 3 months. I have a handful of clients that I have for 6 months and two for a year. It just really depends on what they're trying to solve for. I have clients that I've been working with since they were promoted, and I'm working with them now on trying to get to the next level, and we're together for a year. So
Mm.
it just really depends on what they want to do. So usually I get a renewal rate. Usually when I work with people for 3 months, they get their promotion, they usually renew, and we stay on for 6 months or a year. Um, so usually we try to solve for one issue. Oftentimes people want to get more visibility at work. And that's a job within itself to start getting visibility, to start running a political campaign at work and to start being more visible. It
Mm.
requires work and it requires some incremental change because we don't want you going in there being Orlando 1.0 today and then tomorrow you're Orlando 2.0. It really has to be incremental shifts so people can digest it. So typically we're usually solving one of the number one ways that I get my clients, and I still get them this way, they get blindsided on the performance review,
Mm.
which we're coming up to that time of the year. I saw your post yesterday. We're coming up to that time of the year again, but often they maybe were just so busy that they didn't know that. They also start realizing that their boss didn't have their best interest at heart, because as you move up higher, I do find that some bosses can be very territorial and they want to be the only one. I have found that as people move higher. So sometimes those are the things that we work through, but for the most part, somebody coming to work with me, they don't see getting a new job as the only solution. They want to work through it there. They want to work through the issue there at their job.
And so that's a follow up question there too. Are you finding that people understand the why behind why they're wanting to get promoted? Because you did say some just want the title, right? The bigger
Yep.
paycheck, hopefully. Is there some clients that you're like, I don't think your why is stable enough, and you might fumble because you're going after it for the wrong reasons?
Yeah. So I would say my basic criteria of you climbing is that you care about people.
Hmm.
And then if you want more money, you want more money. I'll help you get more money. But you can't be a tyrant trying to get more money. You can't be a tyrant trying to get a title.
Yeah.
So the first is, and most of my clients, I have one client now, she's watching. She is such a great leader. She's a finance leader, and she is really good at leading her team and getting them
Mhm.
visibility opportunities. That is really my only criteria, is that you are not a tyrant. Because most people are already coming to me as a people leader.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Now the other criteria is, do I ever say you're not in it for the right reasons? Well, I can't say that that has ever really happened with my ICP. I don't feel like it's necessarily in their mindset. I haven't really seen that. Um, because there's a lot of people, the only way they're going to build their wealth is if they're an entrepreneur. And most of us aren't going to be entrepreneurs. Most of us are going to always be entrepreneurs. And so
Mhm.
the way for them to build their wealth, unless you're super technical, and I don't really deal with tech too much. Most of my clients come from core functions. So, they have to grow. Unfortunately, the career framework is built for you to start leading, to start getting titles and compensation.
Mm. Or
So,
most of your clients. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, sorry, go right ahead.
I would say, is most of your clients made up of women versus men, or what's that landscape you're seeing? Do you see now more women looking to get promoted?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I primarily been serving women, not because I am not serving men. It's just naturally that's who moved forward with the coaching. So then I just narrowed down my niche a little bit further there.
Mhm.
Now that I'm going to group, I am inviting men into that. But I will say that there's a lot of women. Right now, my diversity makeup of my clients is right now 50% Black, 25% white, 25% Latina.
Okay, that's a good mix. That's good.
Yeah.
What's
So
the
it's a nice
yeah?
mixture.
What's the industry makeup if you're tracking that? Where are they coming
Yeah.
from?
Finance, human resources, marketing. Um, am I missing anybody? I attract a lot of human resource people, a lot of talent
Mhm.
acquisition people, because a lot of my stories that I write are from that perspective. And I think those keywords bring those people, bring people from HR. Um, for the most part, it's pretty much core functions. Recently brought a engineer on from Netflix. That was a new one for me.
Mm.
And yeah, for the most part, a general manager, chief of staff I have right now. Um,
Mm.
but that's mostly who I get.
Now, I would think out of those, and I love HR practitioners, like the
Yeah.
companies I've worked for in the past, some of the people who I cling to the most were the HR directors um, and hung out with. And so definitely, and I'm under the umbrella as a talent acquisition professional. But I would think still the HR ladder is still tighter than most to excel in.
It can be. I would also say because HR tends to be homogenous from a gender perspective,
Mm.
depending on what that looks like, it can definitely have a lot of drama. I've definitely seen that. I've definitely experienced that.
Mm.
Um, I think that that can make it really hard. I would say that I had good experiences. I think it just depends on company size. Um, but because HR is seen as a cost center, yes, that's the reason why the belt is a little bit tight.
That view has to change so quickly.
It
Like
does.
it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Oh my god. So with that, and we're still. I want to make sure I'm on topic. Promotional
Yeah.
strategies, because I get a lot of reach out too from folks who are kind of new, graduating with their degree in HR and want to start in whether it's a generalist role or etc. But it seems, again, not functioning directly as an HR practitioner, but working closely with them. It seems to be an extremely saturated field with that. And again, like you said, there are some
Yep.
barriers based on culture that will limit the opportunity and the growth for an organization.
Yeah.
What do you have more of a specialty type training? I know you have your program, but because you're coming from that space as well, um, is there an extra secret sauce that you can say, hey, here are some things to look for when it comes to organizations to target that will not, be red flags. Here are the non-red flags that you should look for in an organization to where you may have at least some type of success in moving up that organization.
Yeah, so I do, and I don't have anything that's more HR specific. So I should be transparent. When I got promoted to VP of HR, I was not necessarily looking for that job.
Mm.
I reported directly to the CEO of the company. I did a project for him, and then he called me up one night asking me if I wanted the role, and I was like, it's getting ready to quit for to start my business.
How much are we talking? Right.
And so it was, "How
That could
much
be
are
the
you
seed.
talking?"
Yeah.
"Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay here." And so that's what happened. I love working for him. His name's Duran Kimple. He was like a general in the Israeli army. Very nice guy. Um, and I still work there fractionally now. I just have it off my profile because I don't work there weekly anymore. But I will say that one of the things that I look for with my clients is we look to make sure that they're living their values. So when I have clients that want to work at a company and they're really excited at the phone screen and they're like, "Oh, this company promotes diversity." And I'm like, "Okay, that's cool. So what I want you to do is go look at their profiles of the most melanated person and see if they have promotion lines. They're
Mhm.
living their values."
Mhm.
Oh, you don't see that. Okay. So starting to do some background check work without asking. So the truth is, I think observation is better than asking a question when it comes to job search, because you're going to get the fluffy answer. I do think that there are questions you can ask. And for the most part, with my clients, I do have them to look for certain things, but mostly I have them to observe. Are people taking off? What are they liking on LinkedIn?
Mhm.
Because liking is sort of like sharing a little bit about what they're dealing with. Um, we're also looking for, has their manager promoted anyone recently? How long has their manager been there? Manager been there 20 years? They probably going to want you there 20 years in order to get promoted because they think you have to do it the same way. So those are some of the things that I look for. I have to be honest, even if I hear about a cover letter being required, I'm like, maybe they're antiquated. So I do
Mhm.
have some rules. I do have some rules, but for the most part, some of the things that we're looking for, it's not necessarily in questions, it's more so in observation in the earlier stages of the job search.
Yep. 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 Yeah, you can tell a lot by their recruiting practices,
Yeah.
and even through you applying through the ATS. You're like, are you kidding me? You still
Mhm.
want me to do manual after I've uploaded it? What are we asking here? What are we doing here? And so that's a massive shift, I think,
Yep.
in ship to turn for organizations. They're not even thinking
Oh,
for
yeah.
the most part. All this money they're pouring into ATS systems, and I forgot I made a post a year ago. It's like we're so focused on the applicant tracking, but we're not focused on the applicant retention. And
Yeah.
so we're assuming the technology is going to get us a better candidate.
Mm-mm.
I don't know where the data is for that. That's to help us streamline internally, but externally, candidates don't care for the most part the latest and greatest ATS unless they're directly utilizing that platform, or if they're in the
Well,
tech
unless they got to
space.
apply on Workday. Everybody hates Workday
Yeah,
applications.
yeah, 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 yeah. Got to create a profile.
Yeah.
Got to go through
Yeah.
this. Yeah, every
Yeah.
question under the sun, right? And so it's like we're companies are dumping all this money and assuming to say, okay, to get a better, get top tier candidate, get this, get the latest and greatest ATS, and they all say the same stuff, all the vendors, but there's no data to say that you have. You
Yeah.
just right. It's they land on it. It starts with the job description. This is my opinion: job description, profile, and
Yep.
understanding the culture from an external visibility standpoint. But another conversation we can definitely unpack for sure. Time has flown by, April. Whoa, I could have swore it was only like 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Gave so much, but I feel as though it's just a little scratch on the surface. So there's definitely, I want to have you back on to really go in deep with some folks to help some folks on and how to position themselves and really think about a strategy if their goal is to get promoted internally or externally with another
Mhm.
organization. Your framework, because I think it's definitely unique and a separator from most coaches out there, which I love. So,
I think
mhm,
Orlando, the reason why I feel that way, I had this conversation earlier
mhm,
when I think that people are shifting from being wanting to find their answers to working with somebody who could just help them implement. I
yeah,
think people are craving that a little bit now that coaching's starting to mature. Like it's not a new thing like it was back in 2016, like it was new. People are really familiar with what coaching is. So
yeah.
I do embrace consulting a little bit more. So when I do talk to my clients, I let them know that what the container makeup looks like. And it's like 50, it's about 50-50.
Mm, good, love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Share with folks where they can consume your content, get connected with you, and work with you.
Sure. So I am here on LinkedIn. Recently just cut back because I am on here way too much. So my posting schedule will be Monday through Thursday, likely two times a day those days. You can find me on Instagram at I am April Little. I do some reels over there. I recently just recorded some, and so I'll have those uploaded soon. And if you are someone you're looking to become an executive and breakthrough through those roles, and you don't know how to show your work, because we've gotten away from that from fifth grade, having to show our work, then I would like to invite you to join my executive material program launching in January 2025. Price point is probably going to be around 2,400. So we'll look at that, but and that'll be 4 months.
That's a good price point.
Yeah.
You might need to raise that in 6 months. That's a good
Yeah.
price
Yeah. We're
point.
just looking to get some testimonials.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
One question I always ask folks too is, why do you do what you do? What gets you up every morning to forge ahead?
You know, uh, if you have a moment, I will share. I
Take
feel
your
like
time.
not to make this political, but I feel like we're at this point in our history tomorrow. So I want to
Hmm,
share
hmm.
this. Often as someone who's black, so I consider myself ADOS, black American. We often don't feel like we have culture. And there's so many of us. I help everyone, but primarily the primary person that comes to me looks like me.
Hmm.
Um, And we're often told that we can't do things, or we're told that we need to be a leader without a title. And the problem that I have with those types of things is that some of my best leaders didn't have titles, and I have a problem with that because they weren't paid. So, and the other thing is that there's often other cultures that are told they have to be doctors and lawyers, but because being black is a monolith. So, not to go super deep here, but because it's being a monolith, and we're not, by the way. So many of us, Orlando, are told that we need to be executives at least. And for my household, that was the case. My dad works with his hands. He didn't want me to work with my hands. So I work with people to help them realize that dream of becoming an executive because we've been told that we can't and or we're not giving those opportunities. And I want people to know that it's actually not hard to do those jobs. They just need an opportunity. I would actually dare say something radical after working with as many people as I have. The actual execution doesn't get harder past the director level. It might get harder in terms of you're directing where the work goes and you're creating the
Hmm.
vision, but it's not harder to where people are like, I don't want to manage extra people. I don't want to do this. You're probably going to do it anyway. So I guess my call to action is that those people in those seats aren't smarter than you. you can do it too.
Love it. You heard it from the unapologetic Miss April Little. Love it. So, definitely, if you are watching currently right now, please put in part two in the chat. This way we can commit Miss April to a part two right now, live on LinkedIn in 2025. Have her back so we can dive deeper. But I've seen the comments were blowing up like crazy. Um, just giving her praise for her tactics that she shared, and for the folks that are in her coaching program. As I'm talking, more comments are coming in. I can't even get to them. Well, for sure. But any I want to give you another opportunity. That was a great closeout, but I think you have more. I see you as someone who always has an aspiring message. Give them one more for the folks that are looking to make the shift, and understanding if they do want to make the shift, what they should be really thinking about first.
Yeah. Um, I think if you want to begin making the shift, you can start making a small change with how you show up at work. So that's starting to look at internally, how are you showing up? How do you show up when you're pissed off? How do you show up when you're happy?
Mm,
And deciding how you want to be seen. Because as we know, the most important decisions about your career will not be made when you're in the room, but you very much control that by how you act when you are in the room. So starting to make those incremental shifts of how do I want to be perceived as a leader? What do I want people to say when I'm not in the room? And what do I give them to advocate for me when I'm not in the room? So
mm,
start there, and then you can get more tactical, of course, and start looking at the career frameworks and looking at what is it? How do I, how business coaches say, let's 10x your vision. How do you 3x your career vision? What does being a specialist today, 3 skips from now, your director, what does that look like? And starting to unapologetically work towards that. So many of you are probably listening to this. I saw a comment, and I've posted this, and I will say it again. You have toxic bosses, you have bosses that don't want you to move up. Let's learn from them. They didn't let anything get in their way, so don't you let them get in yours. I'll
mm.
leave you with that.
Well, folks, we're going to end it there. I appreciate you again so much, April, for joining me. Hold on one second. We'll close this out, folks. But
Sure.
thank you for everyone who said part two. And we'll see you next time on the Career Talks podcast.